To look at a lot of the services, what has been with respect to some vulnerable and key populations. So as you notice in the abstract, we'll be looking at people who inject drugs, female sex workers. We'll also look at people in prisons. And I have with me here presenters for this afternoon. I will be introducing them one after the other as they come to the podium. The very first person who will be presenting to us on the assessment of drug use among people in prisons, the Nigerian experience, is Dr. James Anenih, Deputy Director, Nigeria AIDS Control Agency. He is the head of research and publication. You're welcome, and over to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
And thank you for coming out to support this session. Sorry, I have to do very carefully. Anyway, this is an assessment that looked into various aspects of HIV/AIDS transmission in Nigerian prisons. Specifically, this aspect of the abstract, or this presentation will look at drug use, even though the assessment covered HIV/AIDS prevalence and tuberculosis in Nigerian prisons. Next slide, please. Okay, as a background, we all recognize the fact that the prison population are a vulnerable group, especially with regards to HIV/AIDS and other sexually transmitted infections, and also for TB and drug use. Penal institutions all over the world are considered environments for fast and uncontrolled spread of HIV/AIDS for obvious reasons, because these are incarcerated group of people. In 2018, we carried out a national prison study, an assessment, during which we looked at, just like I said earlier, we looked at HIV/AIDS prevalence, presumptive TB, and drug use among inmates in Nigerian prisons. Next slide. The study area, for funding reasons, we looked at selected states in the geopolitical zones in Nigeria. Nigeria is broken into 6 geopolitical zones. So what we did was look at strategic states in these zones. And we also mentioned here that this is the first phase of the study. This is the second phase that we look at the other institutions, the other correctional institutions in Nigeria. So these are the states that we looked at. We conducted the study, the assessment at. The study design was pretty straightforward. It was a cross-sectional design, employing basically mixed methodology of qualitative and quantitative data collection methods with people in prisons and then staff. We used structured questionnaires, open-ended qualitative guides. Voluntary HIV/AIDS testing was done, screening for TB in inmates that participated in the study. And then, of course, we sought national ethical approval from the National Health Research Ethics Committee. Next slide, please. So the results. First of all, let's quickly look at the demography of study participants. We looked at, the study looked at about 2,511 people in prisons, 92% of which were males. 50% were aged 25 to 35 years. I'm sure that's not surprising to us. 98%, of course, obviously are Nigerians. There are a few foreigners. 40% had secondary level education. And then 75% were employed prior to being incarcerated. And 65% were single. We looked at the confinement history. As you can see, for 3 months to less than 1 year, You have, funny enough, you have a lot more females. 1 year to less than 3 years, and then 3 years to less than 5 years, then 5 years to less than 10 years, and then more than 10 years. Next slide. Types of drugs used by people in prisons prior to confinement. Pretty self-explanatory. You look at cannabis, male versus female. Alcohol use, they're very high. Heroin and opioid. Codeine use, that's also significantly high. Morphine, then tramadol is also high because it's pretty common in Nigeria also. Then cocaine and then amphetamines. Those were the drugs we looked at. Drug use in Nigerian prisons. If you look at, we compared the general population versus people in prisons, just to give us a context. You look at the under general population, you look at the lifetime use of cannabis was 11% versus 50% in people in prison. Use of opioids, 5% versus 16% for people that live in prisons. Then injecting drug use, 0.05% in the general population versus 2.5% in people in the prison. About 1 in 2 people in prison had used cannabis. And about 1 in 5 people in prison had non-medical use of opioids. History of injecting drug use. This basically was looking at if you've ever, the question was if you've ever used injecting drug inside, if you had used injecting drug inside the prison versus outside. For males was 0.2% of 4 people that responded. For those that only used drugs outside the prison, it was 0.4% out of 10 respondents. And of course, the column for females was 0 in both respondents. Only inside, those that have used injecting drug only inside prisons was 2% out of 46 respondents. For females, 0.5 out of 1. Total 1.9 out of 47 respondents. And then of course, the never session, 97.4% out of 2,234. History of sharing injection items inside prison. For needles, we had only about 18. Syringes, 7. Razor, 89 for obvious reason. I think the explanation for that will be that razor blades are typically shared for shaving and for other things, not necessarily related to drug use, but as also a dangerous items for fluid exchange. Then cutleries and then others. Next slide, please. Okay. Following the assessment and based on the abstract, we are looking at the conclusions and recommendation was that you find that drug use, as dangerous as it is, the prevalent drug use in Nigeria is not really injection drug use. So the study demonstrated the use of drugs amongst people in Nigerian prisons, all right, and showed that majority of the drug use are the non-injection type. Given the high rate of infectivity for both HIV and hepatitis via direct inoculation through contaminated needles, evidence-based strategies are required to eliminate needle sharing. You might say, well, why is that so important, considering that the primary drug use in Nigerian prisons is cannabis and not really injection drug, and not really needle sharing required drugs. And then there's need for targeted intervention to male prisoners while also controlling both injection and non-injection drug use within prisons. So as limited as injection drug use are in Nigerian prisons, it's still important to look at that vulnerable population and try to reprogram, to avoid an explosion of injection drug use in prisons. So this is basically the acknowledgement for those that contributed immensely to this study. Like I said, it's the first phase. We're working to conduct the second phase of the assessment in other Nigerian prisons. And these are the institutions that contributed financially and otherwise: United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes, UNODC, the Federal Ministry of Health, in conjunction with National Agency for the Control of AIDS, and then the Nigerian prisons, of course. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Anenih. Thank you. This because we started a little bit out, we finish, we take all the presentations, and then if there are any questions, we'll take the questions as well. So it's my pleasure to also introduce the next speaker, who is Dr. Zivai Mupambireyi from the Center for Sexual Health and HIV Research in Zimbabwe. She is the project lead for Children and Adolescent Department.
Good afternoon, delegates. Today I'm going to be talking to you about a study that was conducted in Zimbabwe to explore the clinical and social status of young mothers
Please move
with HIV.
Keep the mic close to you. Yes.
Okay, exploring the clinical and social status of young mothers living with HIV in Zimbabwe and their infants. So the study was funded by UNICEF and it was implemented in collaboration with AfriCAID, who are implementing the Young Mental Mother intervention. So what were the study objectives? We wanted to find out the clinical and social status of the young mothers who were living with HIV, and also to assess the child developmental status, outcomes using the Malawi Development Assessment Tool, and to screen for childhood disability among HIV-exposed infected infants and HIV-exposed and uninfected babies. So to take you through the methodology, this was a mixed method cross-sectional study. Eligible young mothers recruited from the Young Mental Mother registered, and with the help of the village health workers, completed a structured questionnaire. They had a clinical examination, and they also had a viral load testing. And all the children or infants who were recruited, they had a clinical examination. They also had a developmental assessment, and at the end they had a confirmatory HIV testing, and infants who tested positive also had a viral load test. And we also conducted some qualitative interviews with the mothers and their spouses. And among the mothers who participated in the interviews, they also had an opportunity to keep audio diaries at home for 2 weeks, recording their experiences. The study was ethically approved by the Medical Research Council of Zimbabwe and the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine. Next slide. So to take you through the results, I'll start with the maternal characteristics. So we recruited a total of 177 mothers and 176 infants, and out of the mothers, 68.3% of the mothers were married, and 27% were divorced. 63.3% acquired HIV later in life, while about 36% were perinatally infected, and about 1.7% didn't know how they got infected. All the mothers were on ACT, and about 44.6% were initiated prior to their pregnancy. And these were mostly perinatal infected mothers. About 83.6% of the mothers were on first-line regimens, and about 16.4% of the mothers were on second line. And among those on second line, we had 3 that were failing on second line. About 86% of the mothers were virally suppressed, with a viral load of less than 1,000 copies per microliter. And about 13.6% had a viral load of over 1,000 copies per microliter, with the highest viral load being 1.354 copies per microliter. Like this. More than half of the mothers scored 12 and above on the age post-depression scale, which indicates the risk of postnatal depression, and about 13.5 is severe depression. About 35.9 of the mothers scored 9 or above on the Shona symptom questionnaire, which shows risk of common mental disorders. Next slide, please. We compared adherence between mothers who had high scores and low scores on the three mental health scales, and mothers who scored above the threshold on the Shona symptom questionnaire and the EPCS were more likely to report missing acts within the last 7 days compared to those who never reported any symptoms of common mental disorders. When asked about violence and sexual abuse in the past year, about 46.6% of the mothers reported having been hit, slapped, kicked, or physically hurt, and about 18.9% of the mothers reported reported someone having tried to force them to have sex. And there was strong evidence of association between experiences of violence and risk of depression. Mothers who reported experiencing violence were at high risk of depression compared to mothers who never experienced any violence. We looked at the mothers' status disclosure to their partners, and about 88.1 reported that they disclosed their status to someone. And of those, only about 54.2 had reported their status to their partners. And their reasons for non-disclosure was fear of rejection, stigma and discrimination, not knowing how to disclose to their partners, and also fear of being accused of bringing the infection into the union. We also looked at their partners' HIV testing, and about 73% of all the participants stated that their partners had been tested for HIV, and about 14.7 had not tested for HIV, while about 11.9 didn't know whether their partners had tested or not. Of the 130 participants who reported that their partners had had an HIV test, about 6.8% said that their partners were HIV positive, and about 36.2 reported that their partners were HIV negative, while about 22.3% did not disclose their results, and about 0.7% did not collect their results. We looked at the infant characteristics, and we recruited a total of 176 infants, and of those, 46 were aged between 0 to 5 months, while about 86 were above 12 months. We looked at their delivery and where they had been delivered, and about 84% were delivered at a health facility, while about 15.3% were delivered at home. Next slide. So 11 mothers self-reported that their infants were HIV positive, and out of the 11, the study confirmatory test shows that about 9 were HIV positive. All of the infants were on ACT, and of the 9 that were confirmed HIV positive, 5 infants were virally suppressed with a viral load of less than 1,000 copies per microliter. While we had 4 that were not suppressed despite being on ACT, and the 4 that were failed, 2 had mothers who were also not suppressed. We looked at the Malawi Development Assessment 2, and out of the 173 children who completed the MDAT, about 12.7 were not able to do 3 or more items typically for children of their age, on at least 2 domain scores. That is the gross motor, the fine motor, and the social and language. This is the cutoff used for developmental delay, and the scores were lowest in the fine motor. A low MDAT score was more common among children that were standard than about 10.5% who were not standard. And 4 out of the 11 children who were HIV exposed and infected failed to do 2 or more items compared to 18 out of the 162 children who were HIV exposed and uninfected. We looked at the WHO 10 questions scale, and out of the 48 children who are aged 2 years and above who completed the assessment, about 62.5 had a reported delay or limited function in at least one of the 10 areas measured by the 10 question scale. The most common was a serious delay in sitting, standing, walking compared with other children. So despite dealing with depression, violence, and stigma, maternal viral suppression was good, and this suggests good adherence and retention in care. Maternal viral suppression negatively affected children's viral suppression. We know that children depend on their caregivers or their parents for ART management, and mothers who were failing had infants who were also more likely to be failing. More than half of the mothers were at risk of common mental disorders, with some being at risk of severe depression. We know that depression is a negative effect on adherence and ART, and severe maternal depression has well-described consequences for the cognitive development of infants. Infant HIV resulted in poor cognitive development. So what are some of the recommendations? We're recommending that the young mental mother intervention should incorporate violence prevention and support, as well as mental health interventions. And that the young mental mothers should support both the mothers and their partners to adhere well to treatment. And that the young mental mothers should continuously give information and support to mothers and their partners to make informed decisions regarding disclosure. There are concerns about encouraging these young mothers to disclose their status, because recent evidence is showing that encouraging young people to disclose their HIV status to their partners may actually have deleterious implications for their well-being and could potentially derail their adherence efforts. So we need to treat carefully. Then we also encourage or recommend the young mental mother intervention to consider early childhood development intervention and nutritional support for HIV-exposed babies. We want to thank and acknowledge all the participants who took part in our study, and we also want to thank the young mental mothers and the village health workers who assisted us with the recruitment. We also want to thank our Ministry of Health for the support that they've been giving us throughout the years. And we also want to thank the UNICEF Zimbabwe staff for their technical support, and the African team for making this study a success, as well as the session team for the data collection and analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. We also want to thank Dr. for the presentation. Please take your seat. We will take the third from Dr. Etienne Karita from the San Francisco Project in Rwanda, and he will be addressing us on assessment of HIV prevalence amongst children born to HIV-infected female sex workers in Rwanda. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I first would like to thank the conference organizers for the opportunity that was given to me to share with you the findings from our program evaluation on the assessment of HIV prevalence among female sex workers here in Rwanda. Next slide, please. As you know, there has been tremendous improvement in the prevention of mother-to-child transmission programs in the world, but still, every day we have about 500 children who are newly infected, mostly because of poor access of pregnant women to antenatal services in many settings, low uptake of HIV testing during pregnancy, and low use of antiretroviral treatment by HIV-positive pregnant women. We also know that in many African countries, female sex workers are disproportionately affected by HIV infection, with, in some settings, prevalence of HIV that is as high as 15% or even higher. And in many settings, those women are characterized by poor health-seeking behavior. So the main reason we did conduct these assessments to know, because we didn't know anything about the use of PMTT services by HIV-positive female sex workers and the prevalence of HIV among these children. We go to this week. Next one, please. So the objective of the program was to assess the uptake of PMTCT services by female sex workers, assess the prevalence of HIV among children born to those female sex workers, and evaluate the risk factors associated with HIV infection among infants. Next. This program was implemented in the context of a large-scale program that was offering HIV prevention services to female sex workers, and the program was funded by CDC. And we approached UNICEF to see if we could also include the infants of those women to see if they were also HIV positive. Basically, we were recruiting female sex workers using their peers in non-hotspots of sex activities, mostly here in Kigali, the capital city of Rwanda, and in the western province that is bordering the Democratic Republic of Congo. So women were given a voucher by their peers, and they had to present this voucher to nearby health centers where they would receive for free HIV counseling and testing, screening and treatment for sexually transmitted infections, condoms, family planning, counseling and provision, and antiretroviral treatment for those who were found to be HIV positive. Next. As I mentioned earlier, so these women were invited also to bring their children who were below 18 years of age to the clinic for HIV testing, and we recorded the history of antenatal clinic attendance during the time they were pregnant for that particular child, antiretroviral use during pregnancy, and whether they delivered in maternity setting or not. Children were tested for HIV using the national HIV testing algorithm. For those who are 2 years of less, if they are HIV positive, HIV antibody positive, we were also able to do PCR. And those who were 2 years and above, we were only performing for antibody testing. Next. So in 15-month period, we were able to enroll over 3,000 children who were born to approximately 1,400 female sex workers. 72% of these children were enrolled in Kigali, and the remaining 28% were recruited from the western province. About 11% of the kids were less than 2 years old, 20% were in the age group of 2 to 5 years, 30% 6 to 9 years, and 40% were 10 years or older. On this slide, you will see in blue the uptake of antiretroviral treatment during pregnancy. As you will see, there was an increasing trend over time. In the years 2000-2004, we had only 23% of HIV-positive pregnant women who were able to take antiretroviral treatment during pregnancy. This increased to 41% in the years 2005-2009, 68% in 2010-2014, and more recently, 2015, we had nearly 90% of those women who were using antiretroviral treatment during pregnancy. In the orange block, you see the proportion of kids who were born in a maternity. We also saw an increasing trend over time, from 70% in 2000-2004 to almost 95% more recently, 2015-2018. Next. Regarding the prevalence of HIV among those kids, as I mentioned, we had a total number of 3,011 children, but we were able to confirm the HIV status in 98%, which is 2,963. For some of the kids, they still had indeterminate HIV status, or their PCR was not, the result was not yet available, because all kids came in the interval between when they were not supposed to get an HIV, a PCR test, because it has to be done at specific time points in their visits. So among those in whom we were able to determine the HIV status, the prevalence was 4.4%. We found 131 HIV positive children, and 86% of those children, their mothers knew already the HIV status of the kids. So of the 131, we only had 18 who were newly identified as HIV positive. Next. As shown for the uptake of ARV or proportion of deliveries in maternity, that was increasing over time. Similarly, we were also seeing a decreasing trend of HIV infection among children over time. In kids who were older, the prevalence was much higher than in kids who were young. On this slide, you see that among kids who were less than 2 years, the prevalence was 0.7%. Those aged 2 to 5 years, the prevalence was 3.1%, and after 5 years, it was almost 6%. So it shows an exact correlation between the ARV uptake, increasing ARV uptake, and decreasing HIV prevalence among kids over time. Next. There was no association of HIV infection among children with the fact of being born in a maternity setting or living area. Those who were born in Kigali or in Western province, the prevalence was the same. These two factors were not associated with HIV infection. And the only risk factor that was associated with HIV infection in those kids was just ARV use during pregnancy. The women who used ARV during pregnancy has a note of 0.3. In conclusion, next. I would say that in Rwanda, female sex workers have access to HIV prevention and PMTCT services. Uptake of PMTCT services also, as in the general population of other pregnant women, it's increased over time. And the HIV transmission to children also decreased over time. And would like to conclude to this statement that elimination of vertical transmission of HIV is a realistic goal even among high-risk populations like female sex workers. Next, I would like to thank women and their children who participated in this program, the staff at our organization, as well as staff in the health centers where this program was implemented, and particularly would like also to thank UNICEF for funding this program. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Karita. Last but not the least, still also from Nigeria, we started in Nigeria, we are in Nigeria. And to lead us is Dr. Ogbonna Amanze. He is the Assistant Director of the NACA in Nigeria. And he will present on the health, HIV and AIDS, tuberculosis, health situation in prisons in Nigeria.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I guess my own aspect of the presentation will be the shortest because my boss, the first presenter, had already talked through some of the slides in my own presentation. I will only be giving additional background information and then go straight to the findings because what I'm presenting essentially is a subset of a big study that NACA with funding support from UNODC carried out in Nigeria last year. So, next slide please. By way of background, Professor Kate Dolan and her colleagues, they carried out a study in 2015 to provide, the study was aimed at getting a global body, trying to find out the global burden of HIV, viral hepatitis, and tuberculosis among prison inmates. And that their study was able to provide the baseline information we have about HIV, tuberculosis, and viral hepatitis in prison. Please, can you get this? Okay. Sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, welcome back. Thank you. All right, so as I was saying before, the study that they did was able to establish these key statistics on global burden of HIV, tuberculosis, and viral hepatitis in the prison. Their study was able to demonstrate that at any given day, about 10.7 million people are in prison daily. And out of this number of prison inmates, that 3.8% of them are likely to have HIV virus, while 15.1 are likely to have hepatitis C virus, and 4.8 chronic hepatitis B virus infection, and 2.8% active tuberculosis infection. And people that are in prison, it was established that they are 5 times more likely to be living with HIV than others in the community, and that HIV, AIDS, and tuberculosis are among the main causes of death in prisons globally. Next slide. It was also established that the prison environment represents an that prison environments are overrepresentation of key population because there are all modes of transmission in the prison population. The prison environment and the management structure and the criminal justice system in most countries, they increase the vulnerability to HIV infection and tuberculosis and even viral hepatitis. Next slide. In sub-Saharan Africa, by way of previous studies done in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, extraordinary high rates of HIV have been reported in some countries like 41% in South Africa, 27.5% in Cote d'Ivoire, and 27% in Zambia. In Nigeria, there was no previous study on HIV, AIDS, and tuberculosis that involved prisoners. So this necessitated a study that was done in Nigeria in 2018. Next slide. As part of the objectives of the study, we wanted to determine the prevalence of HIV and tuberculosis among prison inmates in Nigeria, the risk factors associated with HIV transmission in prison settings, and the availability of HIV prevention and treatment services in Nigerian prison. Yeah, next slide. My boss had already talked about the methodology of this study. As he mentioned, the study was carried out in 12 states in Nigeria, spread across the socio-political zones in Nigeria. And the study design was a cross-sectional, descriptive study that employed mixed methodology, both quantitative and qualitative. We were able to collect data on attitudes, on knowledge, attitude, behavior, and practice using questionnaires, interview and questionnaires, and for the qualitative, we were able to collect data using focus group discussions and key informant interviews. We did HIV screening among the prison inmates, and screening of TB in the inmates was also carried out. So to the results. This is the demography of the study participants as earlier talked about by my senior colleague. Next slide, please. Okay, the confinement history. From what he had also talked about this one, next slide, please. Let's go to sexual risk behavior among people in prisons. So the study showed that 4% of the prison inmates reported to have engaged in consensual sex with other people while in prison, while 73% of them reported that consensual sex between inmates do occur, while 60% reported that transactional sex between the inmates do occur. Next slide. In terms of knowledge of HIV transmission rules among the people in prison, one interesting thing that the study revealed is the fact that many of the prison inmates were able to identify HIV transmission rules. Like 91% of both males and females said that unprotected vaginal sex is one of the rules through which somebody can get HIV. About 85% of both sexes also reported of unprotected anal sex. Then sharing of needles, 92% in males, and then 91% in the females, while only 54% of the males and 68% of the females said that one could get HIV through mosquito bite. In terms of sharing of eating utensils, 57% of males and 68% of females reported that one could get HIV through sharing of eating utensils. Next one. There was the HIV prevalence that we established from our study among prison inmates. Our study established that the HIV prevalence among people in prison is 2.8%, and the prevalence is more in those aged 45 years and above, which is 8.1%, followed by those aged 36 to 45%, which is 5.7%. The least was those people aged 16 to 24, which is 1%. And one thing you can notice from this study being displayed here. For all the age groups, the females were more affected. We have higher prevalence in the females than the males for all the age groups. Secondly, this prevalence among prison inmates is double of what we got in the big national survey we carried out at the same time last year. That's the Nigerian Indicator and Impacts Survey. The value we have or we got from that survey, which is the current prevalence quoted for Nigeria, is 1.4%, which is the prevalence for those aged 15 to. That the value of HIV prevalence among prison inmates is double that of the general population. Next slide. And in terms of disaggregation by sex, the females, as I was talking about before, 7% and males 3%. Next one. In terms of spread across the socio-political zones of Nigeria, the North Central Zone has the highest prevalence of 7.1%, followed by Southeast that has prevalence of 3.9%. Next one. Then the findings for tuberculosis. 46% of the respondents screened positive for tuberculosis. Higher prevalence was noticed among older inmates in the prison, and the lowest prevalence in terms of geopolitical zone was in the northeast and highest in the south-south. Northeast 17% and south-south 71%. Proportion of people in prisons who screened TB positive in terms of geopolitical zone as shown there. Next slide, please. Okay. Proportion of the respondents who were satisfied with quality of services received in prisons. Generally, most of the respondents were not satisfied with the quality of services they were receiving in the prison. In the Northeast, 50% of the respondents were satisfied with the service, and then Northwest was 51%, and that was the highest that was ever reported in this study, showing a general unsatisfaction with the quality of healthcare services being rendered in Nigerian prison. Next slide. Okay. Availability of health services in Nigerian prisons. HIV testing services were found in 54%, while screening for tuberculosis was found in 56%, and the highest was treatment for tuberculosis, which was found in 60% of the facilities that were used for the study. And you can see from this slide that things like condom programming, provision of lubricants, and testing for hepatitis B and C were very low or even non-existent in most of our prison facilities. Next slide. So in conclusion, these are our take-home, should be our take-home messages. HIV prevalence was twice higher among prisoners than among the general population in Nigeria, and the key risk factors promoting HIV and other STIs in prisoners in Nigeria are unprotected sex and sharing of needles and injection equipment. Secondly, knowledge of key transmission routes was quite high for HIV, but risk perception to infectious diseases was low, as only 55% of respondents felt at high risk to contracting HIV. There was also low satisfaction with quality of health services provided to people in prisons in Nigeria. Consequently, there is need for capacity building among prison health personnel, and comprehensive HIV and TB treatment services must be instituted in all prisons in the country. Finally, there is need for prevention intervention among people in prisons in Nigeria, as well as efforts to improve the availability of sexual and reproductive health and harm reduction services, such as needle and syringe exchange programs and opioid replacement therapy. Next slide. This presentation will not be complete without acknowledging my co-authors, Dr. Greg Ashelford, Dr. James Anenih, and Esther Ikomi. The institution that supported this study, as earlier mentioned by my boss, were the United Nations on Drugs, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. They funded this study. The Nigerian Agency for the Control of AIDS coordinated and led efforts in conducting this study with the support and collaboration of Federal Ministry of Health Nigeria and the Nigerian Correctional Service. That's usually, it used to be known as Nigerian Prison Service. Thank you for making out time to come here to listen to the rest.
Thank you very much. Let's put our hands together for all of them once again. So we have just about barely 20 minutes, 25 minutes for questions. And as you listen carefully, the first and the last presentations dealt with prisons. And the second and third dealt with women. And we're talking about vulnerabilities here and all that. And before I invite the audience to ask questions, I will have one question each for all of you to start the discussion. Starting from the back, the prison study, you observed that females were more. Isn't it just because when you look at the study sample, I noticed that the females were very few. All right, and I also noticed that one of your recommendations was that there should be needle substitution programs and all that. But it was clear from the first presentation, Dr. Anenih, that in fact, when it comes to the substances used in the prisons, it's cannabis, for instance, which is not needle. He concluded in saying that the greatest and the highest the type of substances utilized is not the needle. So how do we reconcile the two? The question is for both of you. And then also, Dr. Etienne, I noticed that your children, the number was almost like twice the mothers. Was it the case of these mothers having you interviewed more than one child, of the people in the study? Or how did it happen? And then for you, I noticed that you talked about violence and all that. But I realized in reviewing your document, your abstract, that there were psychosocial issues of depression, amongst these clients. Would you like to say a little about that? So with these comments, I will now invite the audience to also ask their questions. We'll take one round. If we are able to save some more time, we'll take 2 rounds. Please assist us with the mic. Okay, thank you. Can I see the hands as well? Yes. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether the question was already answered by the just evident speaker. But the question I want to find out is the preference was higher in females than males. Is it a question of they were affected from outside, they entered the prison while already affected? Because from the presentation, there were 2 common methods of transmission, that is through sex, but also through injecting or sharps, so to say. But then, so the women who were found to be, a lot of them, the preference response will be higher among them. I'm trying to understand, how were they affected in the prison? Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Etienne. I work with the program in Nigeria. I'd like to congratulate the folks that work at the prison work for pioneering the work in Nigeria. So I have 2 questions. The first one is based on ethical consideration about assessing inmates in prison. I want to know what ethical pathway you took in this study. That's the first one. Then the second one, is the relationship between the age and the prevalence of the HIV seems to be directly proportional. As age increases, the prevalence of the HIV will also increase. Could you kindly explain that? Thank you.
Okay, so I have one question.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last fourth one for the round one. Yes.
Right. So, so it was very alarming to see the very high rates of tuberculosis, especially in prisons, and similar in countries where I come from. Since as all governments have committed to address latent tuberculosis infection also, and by rolling out latent TB preventive therapy to people living with HIV and contact persons, etc. So in prison settings, how is there any plan or program to roll out the TB preventive therapy, the latent tuberculosis, as every single case of active TB disease comes from latent TB pool? Thank you.
Okay, so can we take the answers and then we'll move on? Who starts?
All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for your questions. So you asked question about your concern about the high prevalence of HIV among the female inmates. So you were wondering how possible could it be an issue that had to do with the number of females that participated in the study. I want to tell you that as at the time the study was done in 2018, the total population of prisoners in Nigeria was a little about 75,777. And out of this number, females were about 1,500 and something. You understand? Just to let you know that you have more males than females in Nigerian prison. And as I mentioned before, the respondents for this study were selected through systematic interval sampling. So that tells us that at the end of the day, more males were selected for this study. But the truth of the matter is the fact that even among the total population of the respondents, that the females were more affected or infected with HIV than the males. So the females represent the actual population, that's the majority of the population of the people that have HIV among the prison inmates in Nigeria. And to the question, the person at the back asked whether these people were infected in prison or before they came into prison. One cannot really establish that because there was no baseline study, or there's no information about the HIV status of the inmates before they came into prison. What we reported is just the value we got from this one-off survey, which is just a cross-sectional survey. We are only reporting what we got last year when we did the survey. Okay, we don't really know their HIV status because it is not the norm. It's not the practice that when somebody is admitted into the prison, they will screen that person to know the HIV status of that person. It is not a tradition. Okay. Dr. Bolaji asked about the ethical consideration we took in this study. Yeah, for this survey, we got ethical clearance from the National Health Research Ethics Committee of the Federal Ministry of Health. We obtained ethical clearance before we started this study, and all the participants, all the respondents in this study, they gave their full consent before they participated. You understand? We explained to them what the study was all about, the objectives of the study, and they gave their informed consent to participate in the study. The question about age and prevalence, that's your second question, that the prevalence was more in those age 40 years and above, right? So what I can say about that is that it's very possible that the older age group, right, it's possible that possibly they were even infected before they came into the prison. And the second reason could be, as they stayed in the prison, as time progressed, they were involved or exposed to other risk factors that could promote acquisition acquisition of HIV and they got infected along the line. Okay, and for the fact, you should also know that our criminal justice system, the younger age group juveniles, they are rarely, those that are maybe 16 years, maybe 18 years, they are rarely kept in our general prison. In fact, they are kept in hostel institutions where they keep the young people. So don't be surprised that we are not having HIV prevalence being more on that younger age group. Yeah, so that's my question. Your question about tuberculosis, high TB. That's if you listen very well in my recommendation, we really need to improve or scale up HIV prevention and treatment programs, and also TB prevention and treatment program in our prison. For now, what we have is not optimal, but we are hoping that from the findings of this study, we are going to use it as a basis to push for scaling up of prevention for TB in our prison institutions. Thank you.
Doctor, would you like to say something about
Thank you very much. Thank you to my colleague because he has answered all the questions. I was hoping he would pass the mic over so at least I can address some of the questions, but he addressed almost all the questions regarding the prison study. Just to quickly add that with regard to the sample sizing, a lot of questions came up with regards to the males versus females sample size. That's obviously why the results are the way they are, but going forward, I'm not sure how we'll look at involving more female prisoners, other than the fact that we have very limited female prisoners in our institutions. But that's one of the things we are looking at. Like I said, this is the first phase of the study. In the second phase of the assessment, we're trying to see how we can purposely sample female prisoners. With regards to ethical clearance, just to quickly add that a lot of what has been presented is mostly the adult population. In looking at the poster institutions that require more ethical consideration because of their age group, we looked at primarily the health services provided. But a lot of this assessment on drugs and TB and all of that was done amongst the adult population, and that's really for ethical reasons, because the poster institution or the younger juvenile population are more difficult to deal with regards to ethical reasons. But that was done separated from the general study. Okay? So I think this is
Okay. Thank you so much for your question on the psychosocial issues. So when we recruited the young mothers, they were grappling or battling quite a number of psychosocial issues. Some of them had violent partners, like they were experiencing domestic violence. We also had some who had just divorced, and they were grappling with divorce and social exclusion and isolation from families due to the pregnancy. And for most of these mothers, their pregnancies were unwanted, because we're looking at 15 to 24 years. For some of them, they were also being affected by stigma and discrimination, both from close family members and also from peers and the general population. I'm happy to say when we recruited these mothers, they just enrolled into the young mentor intervention that I talked about, which is layering on the Africa Trantiri differentiated model, which is providing peer support for young mothers. So these mothers, they're enrolling into an intervention where they will have peer-led counseling, they will have home visits, they will have daily messages, and also they will have referrals and integration into the peer-led support groups. So we are hoping that since they are being enrolled into this intervention. It will help to address some of these psychosocial issues that they are facing. Because there is the realization that what happens outside the clinic, like in the home setting, in the environment that these mothers are living, will have a toll or will affect the clinical outcomes. So we need an approach that looks at addressing some of these psychosocial issues that these mothers are facing. And I'm happy to say, yesterday we listened to a presentation from the Africa Tradiri who are delivering this intervention. And they had a randomized control trial which showed that this PLH intervention had an effect on the clinical outcomes, like in terms of viral suppression. So we are hoping that since these mothers are enrolling into this young mental intervention, they will also have the support to deal with the psychosocial issues that we talked about, and we are hoping it will have a positive impact on their clinical outcomes at the end of the intervention. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Etienne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The fact that we had many more children than women is because some of the women had more than one child. So, the simple that. Thank you.
Okay, so you demonstrated that mortality reduced over time. So survival improved over time. That is what.
I said that HIV prevalence was reduced over time.
Reduced over time. Survival. Okay. I saw a hand. Can we take the last round? We have about this. Yes, please send the mic around for me. Who can? We can take it.
Hi, April Rakota, advocate Zimbabwe. Thank you all so much for your presentations. My question is to our colleague in Rwanda on the female sex workers. I'm just wondering if you have any age disaggregation on the moms and if you saw any differences amongst the different age bands of the sex workers and how old they were. And also if you have any information on the timing of the mom's seroconversion or of her testing. So for example, was there any kind of a link between was she tested at ANC at the time of birth? Did she already know her status prior to pregnancy, or any information on her status?
Thank you very much for your question. We didn't see any association between the mother's age and the risk of vertical transmission of HIV. On the other hand, for HIV tests, we found that nearly 93% of those female sex workers had already been tested even before they enrolled into our program. And the only information we had was the approximate date when they were first identified as HIV positive.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that for the Nigeria study, because of the question that came up about whether people were infected before, and because you mentioned that the services were not adequate, would it be a good recommendation that people who are actually admitted into prison should have a baseline of some of these, tests, so that they can be monitored? Because I think a baseline will also link to treatment, isn't it? If somebody was receiving services outside and now is in prison incarceration, the person then is going to interrupt treatment. If you don't know, how would you get to know unless there's a study like this? But then, isn't it a good thing to put in place measures for baseline studies? Baseline screening for people who are admitted. You want to contribute?
Yes.
Yes, we still have time.
Thank you very much, my folks, for doing that wonderful job. That was great. Probably I want to respond to the first question you asked about talking about high number of cannabis and also talking about the GP drug users. Yes, the results really show that the cannabis use is very high in prisons, But also, that is why you actually call for a program action for cannabis. But that does not take away the magnitude of injectable drug use in prison. So two big issues: drug abuse and injectable drug use. So there's no conflict. So what we are calling for partners actually go in the needle use programs. We also look at the issue of cannabis injection in prisons. The one thing we probably missed out is a great partner that was part of the program, as USAID. USAID were a big supporter of this program. They actually supported almost 40% of the fund support, the fund of the program. And as we speak, they've come up a strong, a very valuable action plan as a result of this result from this study. So we now have an action plan for COP 2020 to take care of issues that came out of the study. The issue I think asked
about recommending
yes,
HIV.
yes. We actually did there's a report on the baseline. Our alliance USAID is doing that. As we speak, the partners, there's some partners, the increased partner support for treatment program in prisons. A lot of partners are working as we speak. Our alliance, ICASA, and CDC, they actually have programs in prison as we speak to do baseline tests for all the prison inmates. And it's starting from this year, they actually started in October, and they are taking it forward. So that aspect will be taken care of by the military partner and it's supported by the friends of and the prisons actually. So it's an action that's very important and be taken care of. Thank you.
Also to add that with regards to screening, part of your question had to do with the status before being incarcerated. With regards to that aspect of screening, you probably also want to address the issue of discrimination. I think that comes into play also. If you're having to test people that are incarcerated for HIV/AIDS before going into prison, then you now want to worry about the issue of stigma and discrimination and all of that. So all of that will need to be factored into programming for this particular group.
Okay, thank you. So the issue is not so much about screening as a condition before you are admitted, but a program in place where people who are coming fresh, once you are delivering a service or health screening generally, HIV is part of it. We pick it so yes, if they need a service. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much. It's been a very interesting session. This is trying to reach out to very difficult groups. Female sex workers with PMTSD services is not easy. These are people who don't necessarily come into the health facility, but trying to make sure that we don't need them because prevalence is high, and I know that in these countries prevalence amongst female sex workers is high. We saw in the prison presentation that the prevalence in prison settings is twice the general population. They need to be targeted with some services. And difficult as it may be, we need to continue to make the effort because whether we like it or not, these groups sometimes serve as bridging populations for the general public. And with these comments, I want to thank our presenters for the good work done, and I want to thank our audience for also cooperating. Thank you very much.